Hi, this is Mary Menon Morrissey, and welcome to Building Your Field of Dreams. We're going on a journey together, and during this journey, there's an opportunity, should you choose to take it, to absolutely discover and then find that you can deliver the dreams of your own heart. Things you may have never thought were possible for you, opportunities, experiences, whether it's work, family, relationship, health, that whatever it is that you decide, I want to experience, I want to express, I want to be, I want to do, I want to travel, I want to do these things. These become the content of your dream building. And your capacity for dream building is unlimited, as you will discover. But your knowing for how to do it and your ability to access and then use that power in service of what you really want is what this program is about. And through this journey, we're going to learn how to discover, but then harness, so that you really can deliver the dreams of your heart. And I've just been doing this over the last 40 years with people from all different backgrounds and all over the world. And I'll tell you this works if you work it. So come along, try it on, test it out, and see for yourself. There was a man who walked into a bank. He walked up to the teller and he said, "Will you cash this check?" The teller looked at the check and said, "Well, sure, I can cash the check. Just put your name on the back of it, give it to me, and I'll give you the money." And the man kind of backed up, and he said, "Whoa, wait a minute. I don't want to put my name on the back of that check and hand it to you. You'll be holding my check with my name on it, and you might decide not to give me the money." And the teller said, "Well, sir, no, how it works is you have to put your name on the back of the check before I can give you the money. It's a banking policy." And the other man said, "Well, I understand that, but I want you to understand how I feel. I feel very nervous about that. I don't want to put my name on the back of the check and hand it to you, and then you'll be holding it, and you might decide not to give me the money." And the teller said, "Sir, I will give you the money. You have to go along with banking policy." The other man argued with the teller back and forth. They went, finally, the teller just had it, and he says, "I'm sorry. I'm not going to be able to help you. You need to leave, go to another bank, or try something else, because I'm not going to be able to help you." So the man left. He went to another bank, and he went through the same routine, and again, he was refused service. He went to a third bank. He's going through the same routine with the teller, explaining how he doesn't want to put his name on the back of the check before he gets the money. And finally, the young teller is explaining and process and policy, and finally, this young teller has just had it with this guy. And he reaches under the teller's cage. He pulls out a rubber baseball bat, reaches out across the teller's cage, and whacks the guy on the head, and says, "Sign that darn check." So the guy, looks at him startled, and then he picks up a pen and he signs the back of the check and hands it over, and he gets his money. Money in hand, he goes back to the first bank, and he walks up to that first teller and he says, "Look, down the street, I got my money." And the teller says, "Yeah, but I bet even down the street, you had to put your name on the back of that check before you got the money." And the guy says, "Well, yeah, I did, you see, but no one ever quite explained it to me the way they did." And I laugh when I hear that story, but I also know that that story is not just that man's story. It's your story, and it's my story. In essence, we go to the teller of life, and we say, "Will you please give me my dream? Give me the life I want to have." And life says, "Okay, put your name on the check. Put yourself, your whole self, into a vibrational match with what it is you say you want. Put your name to the dream." And the doors of creation open. And we say, whoa, wait a minute. I don't want to put my full self in. I want to know how it's all going to work out. I want to know where all the pieces are going to come from. I want to get pieces of the dream. I want to be informed. I want to have it. Then I'll put my full self in. Then I'll put my name to it. Every one of us has been given a sacred name. That name is I am. That name, what we lay on the altar of the I am, whether I am limited or I am free, whether I can or whether I can't, it is shaped in the thinking chamber within us. Now, the check, of course, can't just be written that says, "Dear life, I want a good life. I want a happy life." Life does not know how to cash that check. Any more than if you went to a builder and you said to the builder, "I want a happy house. Build me a really nice house." The builder would look at you and say, "You got to tell me what you mean by happy house or what you mean by nice house. You've got to describe. You've got to decide. You've got to give me a picture called a blueprint that I can build to." Well, every one of us lives in this presence, power, thinking substance that shapes itself through our thinking. As you'll hear, there are practices and principles that help us awaken to really who we are and what we're capable of. And it is far, far more than most of us have any idea. I grew up in Portland, Oregon. Mom and Dad loved each other the entire 63 years they were married. I had a great upbringing, one sister 8 years older. And I had a high school experience like most young girls dream about. I was class vice president, I was on the drill team, had a lead in the junior play, was homecoming princess, and at the end of my junior year in high school, I was pregnant. My high school boyfriend had gone off to college his first year, came home on spring break. I got pregnant. May 1, I tell my mother and dad that I'm pregnant, and my mother wept for me as if I had died. In her mind, all her dreams for me were dying. We had a very hasty 10-person wedding, and a couple weeks later, I told one of my trusted high school teachers that I was now married and pregnant. And the next thing I knew, the principal of the high school, Mr. Erickson, called me into his office. And when I was sitting in the office, he said, "So is it true? Are you married and pregnant?" And I said, "Well, yes, I am." And he said, "Well, Mary, you have great academics and terrific honors, but I need to let you know you will not be allowed to return here for your senior year in high school. It would be inappropriate for a pregnant girl to get mixed in with the normal girls," he said. Now, this is 1966. And then he followed that with saying to me, "But we do have a place for people like you. It's a high school. It's not held during daylight hours. It's after dark. It's across the river." It was actually in a part of Portland I hadn't been allowed to drive in after dark. "And it's the place where the pregnant girls and the delinquent boys go to high school." So you can see the thinking of that era. Anyway, so the next fall I drive across the river to the other side of Portland and park my car in this part of the city, and I'm walking up to this big building, which is a normal high school during the day, and then in the evening it's Washington Evening High School for the pregnant girls and the delinquent boys. And as I'm walking up to the school, I remember thinking, okay, every girl here either has a baby or is pregnant, and every guy here is some kind of delinquent. This is my new student body. And when I went in to register, there were a couple of guys standing at the registration table, and one of them said, "Well, hi, my name is Paul, but I'm no apostle." And the kid next to him says, "Yeah, I'm Peter, and I'm no saint." And I just looked at him and I said, "Well, I'm Mary, no comment." Because by now, of course, I was 5 months pregnant. And so what happened then is my first son was born during the winter of that time at Washington Evening High School. And by May, I had graduated from Washington Evening High School. In July, I was in an intensive care ward at Portland Adventist Hospital, having been diagnosed with fatal kidney disease. One kidney, the test said, was totally destroyed with nephritis. The other kidney had 50% destruction and active nephritis. And I was told that if we could get the blood toxin level in my body reduced enough so I could sustain a surgery to remove the right kidney, then maybe I would have 6 months to live. So my mother is watching my 7-month-old son. I'm in intensive care, and I've just been told that the best shot I've got is maybe 6 months. And I'm desperate and devastated. Now, the God of my upbringing was not really a friendly place to go when you felt like you had really messed up. I didn't have a faith practice. I didn't have a higher power to turn to that I really felt reliant upon or would be responsive to me. And finally, the surgery was scheduled, and the night before the surgery happened, about 10 o'clock that night, a woman walked in my room who identified herself as a chaplain in the hospital who was offering prayer with people who were going to have surgery the next day. She asked me if I wanted someone to pray with me. I was scared, and I said yes. She came over and stood next to the bed where I was laying, and then she pulled up a chair and she sat down. She did not begin with prayer. She began this way. She said, "So would you be willing to tell me what's been going on in your life the last year or two?" Now, this was before the idea of a mind-body connection was in the common nomenclature. This was 1967. There had been no mind-body connection on the top, seller list. There had been nothing in Newsweek. Later there would be front-page articles and cover articles about the mind-body connection. There'd be a mind-body clinic at Harvard Teaching Hospital. All of this would emerge, but in 1967, it was in very difficult places to find that actually our thinking and what happens in not only our physical body, but the body of our life are related. Most people had no idea of this. So when she asks me to tell her my story, I'm scared, and so I tell her my story. I tell her what's been going on in my life the last couple of years. At the end of which, she just looked at me, and very compassionately, she looked in my eye and she said, "Mary, everything's created twice. And I know I had a quizzical look on my face that, like, what do you mean? And then she said, the bed you're laying on, the nightgown you're wearing, the sheet covering you, the carpet, the floor, the ceiling, the walls, all this machinery, everything was first a thought before it could become a thing. And then she looked at me and she said, you know this. You just don't know the power of knowing this. And then she said, I hear how much you love your little boy, but I also hear how much you've been hating yourself. You feel like you shamed yourself, you shamed your school, you shamed your family. And now that you're considering the connection between thought and result, cause and effect, that everything that is experienced first began in thought, everything that is created first began in thought, could you consider the possibility that there could be some relationship between this toxic thinking and the toxicity that's in your body that's actually threatening your life? Well, this was like a brand new idea to me, and while some part of me thought this made sense, I had no way to really park this or make sense of it in my mind at that time. And then she said to me, in this universe, there's one presence, one power, one life. It is ever seeking freer, fuller, expanded expression of itself. And that's happening in you right now. And the toxicity that's in your body can be released because it can be released in your mind. And then she went on to say, in this universe, there is this exquisite, precise balance and perfection. Just the mathematical precision with which everything is balanced is so precise that even 1/trillionth of a trillionth millimeter difference in the balance just in our solar system, the whole thing would blow apart. That intelligence is at work right now. It's everywhere present. And she said, could you believe it's possible that if you were to align with that precision that's at work in you, that your whole body could actually respond to that? And in the morning, the doctors would say to you, you don't need surgery. Get up, go home, you're fine. She said, could you believe that that's possible? And I told her the truth. And the truth for me at that moment was, no, I don't think that's going to happen for me. I believed way more in my pain in that moment than in the possibility. And I also at that moment believed a whole lot more in the minor deities than what I would later call the major deity. And I knew a minor deity when I met them because they had MD at the end of their name. And therefore, whatever they said to me was gospel to me. When they said it, it had to be true. And so then she said to me, okay, how about this? Could you believe, if you can't believe you can be totally healed, then how about this? Could you believe it's possible that everything that is the genesis of this problem is either in the kidney that's going to get removed or actually could be swept into the kidney that's going to get removed? And when that kidney is removed from you, so is the problem. Could you believe that? I didn't really know what to believe, but I could hear the interesting thing was I could tell she believed it. And it was the first time I ever consciously chose to believe in someone else's belief who had a higher domain believing. And I looked at her and I said, well, I don't know if it's possible or even probable, but, I'm open to it. And she said, okay, that's all we need is one corner of your mind open to the possibility. Let's work with that. Now, this was before Talbot had written Holographic Universe, before we understood how a higher domain thought always takes precedence over lower frequency thoughts. We didn't know anything about that. But she said, all we need is a corner of your mind open to the possibility. And that's what I'm asking from you right now, is to give a corner of your mind open to the possibility that there is so much more in you and for you than you've known. And that by applying these simple principles and practices over a period of time, that absolutely you really can build a field of your dreams. Absolutely. So when she said, give me a corner of your mind open to the possibility, I said, okay. And she said, then let's pray. I don't know what prayer she did. I didn't hear bells ring. The hair on my neck didn't stand up, but I relaxed. And I must have relaxed because the next morning when I woke up, I had slept all night without waking. I hadn't been able to do that in weeks. I'd been in so much pain. And when the doctors did the surgery, they told my family, who was gathered afterward, that the one kidney was destroyed with nephritis. They removed it. The other kidney, when it was looked at, it didn't look quite as bad as they would have suspected with 50% destruction, but time would tell. And time did tell. Instead of getting worse, I got better. And within a few days was heading home and continued to get better and better and better. And even at 18 years old, that caught my attention. Something is going on here. I'm part of something. And I just began to be like a thirsty sponge for everything I could find in the field of metaphysics, philosophy, psychology, and science to discover how it works in the universe, that everything really is created twice. So I've spent the last 35 years in what I call the laboratory called life, not only searching for these principles, studying these principles, getting degrees in the application of these principles. I went on and got an undergraduate degree in education, a master's degree in counseling psychology, became an ordained minister, received an honorary doctorate in humane letters. I've written a couple of books, and I've spoken to thousands and thousands of people all around the world. I've set intentions and dreams and applied these principles to the intentions and dreams of my heart. Had opportunities that came out of those principles applied to sit for days at a time with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, which was a dream I had, to have a meeting, a small meeting with Nelson Mandela, to speak at the United Nations, hang out with Kenny Loggins. I mean, things that I really wanted to do that were minor dreams compared to some of the major dreams that really would emerge for me. And I just am encouraging you now to consider any possibility. Just open yourself up to the possibility that in this great gift you have called an imagination, that there is a place inside of you that is unmuted by circumstance. It's not controlled by your history. It's not defined by anything you've ever known about yourself. It's absolutely liberated right now into the unlimited possibilities that you can consider. And to just begin to explore, what is the life you would love to live? What would you love to be, to do, to give, to create? If time were your restriction, if education weren't the restriction, if money, if who you knew, if age, all of the many things that often build what we call a paradigm block, where we give power to the conditions we've known to define the possibilities we can have, if none of those were present for you, what would you love? What would you love to be or do or create to the construct of your life? And you'll begin to see the magic as well. You know how they train elephants in India? In India, the elephant is the farm animal, unlike cattle for much of the rest of the world. Because in India, cattle are considered sacred, so the cows are treated with reverence and respect. But they train elephants this way. When they train small elephants, they get a baby elephant and they put a big, strong rope around one of their legs and a big, strong stake in the ground. And that baby elephant pulls and tugs and fights and tries to get away. And ultimately, the rope and the stake are stronger. And the elephant finally gives in to the tug of the rope. As the elephant gets larger, instead of increasing the rope and the stake in size, they decrease it. Because what happens is the elephant gives over to the tug. It leans toward the tug instead of away from it. And so for adult elephants, they just weave river reeds together, and the slightest little tug, and that elephant will go wherever the tug is. Now, it isn't that the elephant doesn't have the capacity to break free from that river reed. Fully, it does, but it doesn't have the knowing. And so it is disconnected from its capacity because it doesn't have the knowing. It has learned to give over to the tug. You and I have some river reed thinking. We've been trained to look to conditions to determine what our opportunities are, what our possibilities are. And it's completely backwards. We've learned to live an outside-in life when the authority and the empowerment to choose and decide. First creation is in thought. Everything is created twice. So when we look to conditions to determine what we can have, we get stuck in just basically repatterning the conditions we've already had. We might change a little color, change a little form, but basically it's almost the same life lived again. I heard once somebody say, you know, some people live 90 years and other people live 1 year 90 times. So what we're going to do is do some repatterning, some paradigm busting, some opening up, and some exploring into what it is that you really want. What would you love to be and do and create? Now, the way it works in the universe, it is a spiral universe. Your very DNA is a spiral. So in this spiral universe, there is everywhere present this ever upward pull of possibility seeking to express itself. Everywhere the universe is seeking for an ever freer, fuller, expanded expression of self. And as unique as your thumbprint is that seeking for expression uniquely as you. So your dreams, what it is that you are here to be and do and express and experience, is unique to you. It will not be something that's a chore. It will be something that gives you life. It will be something that expands you, that opens you, that you are thrilled to be living. That's how the universe works, that when you're in harmony with your soul's purpose, when you're in harmony with what you are here to be and do, things get easier. The flow expands. You become more alive. You're energized. This is the most passionate, wondrous, alive-making way to live life. So the underlying principle of dream building is this: what is within you is greater than anything that is in your surroundings. What is within you is greater than any circumstance of your life. What is within you, the power within you, is greater than your history. Your history does not need to determine your destiny unless you decide that it must. And every one of us carries an idea about our history. And some of that is absolutely just this, river reed thinking. You know, we say, oh, if I just had the education, or if I just had this, or if I just had that. There's all sorts of things that we can hold as ideas about what will keep us from having the dreams we want. But this process will teach us how to, everything's created twice, how to use our thinking in ways that are in service of the dream we say we want, instead of thwarting the very thing we would love to be and do and experience and express. When I was getting my undergraduate degree, I became particularly interested in the work of Abraham Maslow. You know, as a psychologist, he got interested in what made people really happy. And he said, I don't want to study pathology. I want to study what happens in a person's life when they report that they love life, that they love waking up in the morning, that these are people who their relationships work well, they have found their creativity, they do work that matters to them, they live a life that has meaning and purpose in it, and they report that they absolutely love the life they live. And he wanted to determine what were the consistencies, what were the determiners, what is happening in a person who experiences life this way. And he looked at the kind of common things we would look at. He thought, well, maybe these were people who just had, great families of origin. And he discovered that wasn't true. Some of them had horrific upbringings, abusive upbringings. And then he thought, well, maybe these are people who just have a degree of financial freedom that gives them a liberty to experience life this way. And he found that simply was not true. They came from all different economic backgrounds and current conditions. Was it people who only had pristinely perfect health? No, it wasn't true. Some of them had chronic pain, difficult illnesses, all kinds of things. These were not necessarily even people who had not had great loss in their lives. It was something else. And he determined as he studied what he called high potentiated lives, people who were living in the peak potential of possibility. These were people who, when they got up in the morning, they could enjoy the smell of the coffee if that's what was in the room, or even the sound of toast being buttered. That when their child took their hand, it wasn't just surface, it was like a moment that they had, he called them, they had high porosity to aliveness. Now you think of something that's porous, like a sponge, and just soaks it up. So imagine having high porosity to aliveness, that you weren't just swimming in the shallows of your own aliveness, muted by worry or concern or patterns that keep us out of the real depths of our own life energy. And he discovered that there were some commonalities, there were some consistencies, and there were some patterns in the lives of people who lived in high potentiated aliveness. And most consistently it was this: these people paid attention to, were sensitive of, and followed the dreams in their heart. They paid attention to the longings in their own heart. So Maslow had been asking the question, are these people with something added? And what he discovered is, no, these are people with nothing taken away. They hadn't given up that kind of childlike, gosh, I can be and do and create what I want to. There was a study done not too long ago, and it was about genius. And the exploration was into what happens in a person that is living what might be called a genius life. And the research began with a premise that genius is the number of modalities with which one takes in information and is able to synthesize or make use of that information. And what they discovered was, the number of modalities. You can take it in with your 5 senses. You could also take in information intuitively, imaginatively, your ability to use your intellect to shape that information, your ability to make perception out of the information, all of those modalities that every one of us has anyway. When they're in concert or in harmony, there is what we call genius. Now, so they were exploring what happens in people's lives that they live this way, and they discovered that pretty much 99% of all babies operate at a genius level for about the first 18 to 24 months of their lives. The learning curve that each one of us goes through to be able to discover that I can actually control this hand. And you'll watch the little baby look at their hand as if it's something apart from themselves, and the incorporation of bringing the whole body into a system and beginning to shape ideas and learn words and crawl and then walk, and all of the learning that occurs in that first phase of life is so accelerated. The learning curve is beyond anything most of us ever achieve the rest of our entire lives. So we come in as a genius. By the time we're 5, only 20% of us are operating at a genius level. And by the time we're 20, only 2% are operating at a genius level. So what happens to us? What mutes those capacities that are ours that we begin to disconnect from? And what the research said was that the disconnection occurs systematically and over time through this: the learned voice of internal judgment. We start to make ourselves wrong. We start to doubt. We start to look outside ourselves for approval and opinion about what we can be and what we can do and what's possible. And so we learn to be condition-based in our thinking because that's the major programming on planet Earth. That's how most people live. And so we're giving our kids our very best version of how the world works, which is look to conditions to determine what you can be and what you can have. And there's another whole way to live, and that's what we're discovering. Now, as you will discover, as you go through this, there is something at work in you, this ever upward pull of becoming. In the Talmud, which is mystical Jewish writing, it says this: it's as if every single blade of grass has an angel leaning over it, whispering, grow, grow, grow. That blade of grass will actually break through cement seeking the light. And there is that same pull of becoming in you. It will give you ideas and images and possibilities, but it's up to you to allow those to begin to be shaped in your mind as dreams, as ideas that form into pictures, because your mind thinks in pictures. If I say to you, don't think about the Statue of Liberty. Don't think about that woman on Liberty Island outside of New York City. Don't think about the woman with her arms stretched up in the air. Don't think about the torch at the end of her hand. Don't think about the ferries going to and from the island back to the city. Don't think about the Statue of Liberty. What are you seeing? You're seeing the Statue of Liberty. Your mind has no sense of humor. So if you start thinking, oh, I don't want this to happen, or I don't want that to happen, your mind begins to go to work on those pictures. So you really want to focus on what do you really want to create as you're exploring the possibilities. Allow images of possible futures, of lives, of ways of being. Explore in your imagination what you would love to be and do and create and give.